virtue for the month of June. Memo to every corporation. It's that time of year when you change your profile pictures to all colors of the rainbow for the Alphabet Mafia. Be sure to do your annual cash grab to show your virtue, but act fast. This only lasts for 30 days because on July 1st, they'll pretend it never happened at all.
I may be a white boy, but I'm not stupid.
I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
Let me close with this. After I signed the PAC Act into law,
still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside her body.
Hold on.
What about meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess
DCFS would be...
Yeah.
It's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that?
In Massachusetts, right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
I'm sick of having my mental condition come into question.
How dare you, sir?
There was a time in America when contests of athletic prowess were a metaphor for the nobility of man. Historic moments forged by the love of the game celebrated the human potential to achieve excellence. But as time passed and the country neared the millennium, something went awry.
I'm gonna go with the charge.
Okay, tell me why.
Justin Herbert, Williams, Keith Allen.
Okay, all right. I guess we got time for one more.
Offense.
We'll dive in deeper here. Raiders, Chargers. Who are you backing to win this one, Stephen A?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with the Raiders. I'll just go with that.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
But if the forces of evil should rise again to cast a shadow on the heart of the city, call them.
question. How do we go?
He gave us a signal.
This day, we rescue a world from mysticism and tyranny, and usher in a future brighter than anything we can imagine.
Screw them. This is your time. Now go out there and take it. I got something to say.
Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great. Yeah, I just wanna be great.
Welcome to the show. You are one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. And online all the time at westhesportsguy.com. That looks a little different than what I'm used to. But okay, so we're zoomed in a little bit here. Let me see if I can adjust this, or if that's the way it's going to look right now. We're doing it live. So, all right. Well, that's what happens when you're trying to do multiple things at the same time. But regardless, I appreciate you tuning in. Again, make sure you go to westthesportsguy.com, bookmark that site to get all the links to the videos, podcast. I know that hasn't been posted a lot lately, but I appreciate you subscribing to that. That's now on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts, but the link is located there at westthesportsguy.com. I hope you have been doing well of late, because there is a lot to discuss here on my side, not just with the world of sports, as the title suggests that I am no longer going to refer to my favorite basketball team as the Los Angeles Lakers. They will now be known as the Los Angeles LeBron's, the LA LeBron's, however you want to describe it. That is who they will be referred to, and it's mainly because, hey, their new head coach is JJ Redick, a guy who has no prior head coaching experience whatsoever. He was, and this is how much I've watched basketball of late, he is the lead analyst for ESPN prior to taking this job. So that's another thing. I had no idea what was that it was happening. I had no idea that LeBron James was, or JJ Redick, excuse me, was the lead analyst for ESPN now for their NBA games on television. Didn't see that one coming. I saw that he was in the studio occasionally. I figured that's what his main prerogative was, but then all of a sudden it became an analyst. I didn't see that happening, but here we are. That's this day and age that we're in, where somebody with no experience whatsoever can get in to be a head coach here in this day and age. So that's all fine and dandy, except the fact that he's working with LeBron James on a podcast, and that's a bit odd how that whole thing transpired. But besides talking about the Lakers, which we'll get more into here as this live stream goes on, I'm going to tie this into the fact that the corporate media industrial complex, however you want to describe it, if you want to call it mainstream media, however terminology, but it's the corporate ones, it's the big wigs, it's the ones that have been established for many, many decades now. I don't think, if you despise them as much as you do, you probably don't despise them enough with the way things have been going. And I'm not just going to refer to what's going on with the Lakers. I'm also going to tie into the political aspect of things as well. You might not want to hear that here on a sports channel, but I'm going to tie it all together. So hear me out. No script. This is just me tying all these things together this last week and a half. So the first thing that started going down was, you saw, if you didn't, I'll just briefly summarize a lot of the Supreme Court decisions going on here in the U.S. One of them was an overwhelming decision. Now, when I say overwhelming, it wasn't a narrowest of margins like a 5-4 decision. When I say overwhelming, it's 6-3 or anything higher than that. But it was a 6-3 decision that the Biden regime could continue to censor Americans' First Amendment rights having to do with the COVID censorship that was happening with the current regime that's in charge. And that, went to the umpteenth level. It was proven from what happened with the Twitter files that I made a video a while back declaring that, if you didn't believe your lying eyes at this point in time, that fascism was alive and well, and it had been happening in America for quite some time. And the Twitter files essentially prove that without a shadow of a doubt. So from that, there was a lawsuit, and the crux of the lawsuit was coming from the state of Missouri. I believe some other states were tacking onto it to sue the federal government to basically say, look, you clearly censored Americans' First Amendment rights. There's no denying it. It's out there in the open for everybody to see. And with that, if not that monetarily, I didn't expect it to be anything of that note, because I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination with the court system, but the way that the case, I thought, was brought to the Supreme Court seemed to be pretty cut and dry, that there should be something to come about to make sure that something is put in place that this never is allowed again, because how the feds went around to violate Americans' First Amendment rights is they went into backdoor channels talking to higher ups at social media companies via Facebook, Twitter, all the big ones, Google, Apple, like just every single one. But it was mainly Facebook and Twitter, social media companies, that they went into backdoor channels to say, hey, don't allow him to share information that is detrimental to our narrative. We can't allow this person to do this. We can't allow this person to do that. And ripe examples of it, left and right, against medical professionals, media pundits, analysts, you name it, even political figures. So I thought that was a cut and dry case for the Supreme Court, but evidently it wasn't, because they said 6-3. Oh yeah, perfectly fine. They can keep censoring people. We don't see an issue with that whatsoever. Oh, so okay. that was pretty defeating earlier in the week, at least for myself. I can't speak for anybody else, but speaking for myself, I felt pretty defeated after seeing how that came about. But then seeing how the reaction was with that case, and lack thereof, to a point, because this 24/7 news cycle, we just find something else and we move on to basically try to react and get outraged about the next thing. The press really showed its true colors, I guess, and this is just another example of it. Now, they've shown their true colors many other times before this, but if you were privy to watch any chunk of that supposed presidential debate this last Thursday, and if you've watched the clips at least, you clearly saw what I would hope most everybody saw with their own eyes for the last 5 years. And this is going back to 2019. So this is when the current president, Joe Biden, was running in the Democratic primary. He had signs that he was clearly suffering from early onset dementia. He's losing his memory. He's not as sharp as everybody said he was for, half a decade. Being a politician for half a decade, like, just saying that out loud, something's wrong with that. But you saw it in real time after, if you watched any chunk of it, if you watched any clips of it, you saw in real time what was clear as day, that he is not right. He hasn't been right for 5 years. It was clearly known before he was necromanced as the nominee in the Democratic primary. And it was as bad as it could get on Thursday to see somebody in that state. But the way that the press, the corporate media industrial complex, however you want to describe them, the way that they reacted, because the time before Thursday, they were essentially pretending like nothing was wrong with this man. They would tell you, gaslight you, flat out saying, no, he's perfectly fine. He's as fit to serve. He's as sharp as ever. I'll continue to give him bowls of ice cream every day. Just everything every excuse you could think of, they were using it, and basically trying to convince you what you were seeing for yourself, that he's clearly not there. He hasn't been for a very long time now. And it came to its full fruition on Thursday. And that's frightening. It was frightening for a lot of people. Because this is supposedly the commander-in-chief. This is supposedly the guy that is in charge with the way the world is going right now. I'm not even just talking about domestically in this country, but if anybody's in the know, seeing how the world is shaping itself up right now, we're in very precarious times. We've been in precarious times before, but not in a situation where clearly the most powerful man in the world has dementia. It's as clear as day for anybody to see, but to see how the press has mobilized now to go with that and now start saying out loud, he needs to step down. He needs to step aside. He needs to bow out of the race, everything else. So from that standpoint, for them to finally get to this point to tell you this, when they've been lying to you previously for 5+ years now about his mental state, for them to get to that point, it tells you all you need to know about them. The fact that they're more concerned about the presidential race than the fact of how the country has been ran for 3 years with him in office, it tells you all you need to know about the press. You don't, if you despise the press, you don't despise them enough with what had transpired this last Thursday and how everything's continuing to play itself out in real time. So with that setup, with that Supreme Court decision, with that this current regime, which who knows who's in charge of it, clearly now it's okay to say out in the open from the press standpoint, president's got dementia, he's got to go, he's got to step aside. So this current regime that censored people during COVID, it's totally okay for people to still get censored and have their First Amendment rights violated under this regime during the COVID stuff. And it's been proven without a shadow of a doubt in the Twitter files with that it's okay. They can go back to censoring people again. And then the second part of it, seeing the presidential debate, seeing that it's clear this man is not fit. He was never fit to be president. And now they're saying it's okay to have him bow out now. Where was this 5 years ago? He shouldn't have even ran for president. With all that, going into the team formerly known as the Los Angeles Lakers, this is centered more on the press and their lies. And the fact that ESPN, especially at the top of all of this lying that's happening right before your eyes with the Los Angeles Lakers, Stephen Smith, he's very good at what he does. I'll give him that. He's very good at what he does. The guy that he claims to have gotten a scholarship on the spot for making 17 consecutive three-pointers to get a college right on the spot at Winston-Salem. That's his alma mater, Winston-Salem in North Carolina. Division II school. Got a basketball scholarship after making 17 straight three-pointers at a time, it was either in February or March when this supposedly happened, at a time in the middle of their season, college basketball, they're going to have a impromptu tryout for a guy by the name of Stephen Smith. I'm not even going to use the A anymore because I'm sick and tired of it. This is just adding to this man's ego to make sure the A is in his name, to make sure he's not confused with another Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith got a basketball scholarship on the spot after making 17 consecutive three-pointers at Winston-Salem on an impromptu tryout in the middle of their season. That's what he says. Seems quite a bit far-fetched, if you ask me. And then, another side note about how much of a habitual liar he appears to be, going all the way back to this time frame, when he was playing at Winston-Salem, he only averaged 1.5 points in his, it was mid to late 80s when he was there, early 90s, but his claim to fame averaging 1.5 points at Winston-Salem. And it was shown on an ESPN broadcast that he only averaged 1.5 points. They were having a little tongue-in-cheek moment with him live on air. He evidently did not appreciate that, because then he reacted to say, based on the stat line, it showed he played in a decent amount of games, but only averaging 1.5 points. He then decided to say blatantly, live on air, it was actually less than that. I only played in one game because he had a significant knee injury. Well, the math doesn't really add up there, though, because I'm not a math major, but how in the hell do you average 1.5 points in one game? How's that mathematically possible? But then, in the typical Stephen Smith fashion, he decides to go on his own little podcast thing and set the record straight finally and say it was actually less than one game. He didn't even average the 1.5 points that's on record that season they played at Winston-Salem. He didn't play at all, he says, because he cracked his kneecap in half and he had a 6-inch screw put in his knee. Now, this isn't to scale, but take out your measuring tape if you like and measure 6 inches. See how large that is, and imagine how in the hell could a 6-inch screw, according to Stephen Smith, get put in his knee, that he also says was still there to this day, when he had to debunk all the fact checking about his college basketball career. Imagine that, a 6-inch screw. There's no way it can go side to side because it's sticking out on both sides of your knee. And if it goes straight down, up and down, vertically, I mean, that makes no sense. How are you going to bend your knee with a 6-inch screw in there? It's just unbelievable lies. And I did a video a while back too about Stephen A. Smith, and I proved how much of a liar he was. I believe it was in reference to when Steve Nash got hired as the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, and the way Stephen Smith decided to go after Steve Nash for that time frame. But evidently now, with J.J. Redick being named the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, Stephen Smith is not going after him as fervently as he did with Steve Nash. I wonder why. It's most likely, my opinion, because the LeBron James factor and what's going on with the Lakers organization. Because what a lot of people don't understand, to some degree, they might acknowledge it, but it's all about access right now when it comes to sports media, especially, and the primo athletes, the ones at the top. So a guy like LeBron James being the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, all these accolades and, proclamations about how great he is, and him embracing the nickname. I don't think he's the one that started calling himself King James, but that was the name that was given to him when he was playing in high school still. He'd never played a second in college. He went straight to the NBA after being in high school. I remember all that hype. Now, on my side of things, with context on LeBron James, I have never been one to root against LeBron James at the beginning. I wanted to take a wait and see approach with him. I thought he was going about it the way that a lot of guys try to, especially in the beginning of their careers in the NBA, with all that kind of pressure that he was getting, now playing for his hometown team with the Cleveland Cavaliers, trying to get them their first ever championship, and also the first title in Cleveland since the Cleveland Brown days with Jim Brown. So it had been a while for any sports championship in Cleveland. So all that mounting pressure that LeBron was embracing, to his credit, in the very beginning, it was hard not to root for the guy. Of course, things changed for myself, only speaking for myself, was when he decided to make his quote-unquote decision in the most narcissistic fashion and announced to the world in front of a live television audience this whole charade that was put on live television that he was going to go play for the Miami Heat. Well, I think looking back on how that whole thing was playing out, I kept thinking to myself in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, if he's doing all this to say he's staying in Cleveland to play for the Cavaliers, I think he's going about it the wrong way, because this doesn't make any sense for him to go through all this production to say, oh, I'm going to stay in Cleveland. Talking to Jim Gray, I'm going to stay in Cleveland and waste about 20, 30 minutes of people's lives just to say I'm staying in Cleveland. Didn't need to. I figured he was going to go elsewhere to put this whole production on. And he goes to Miami, he goes to play with the Heat. Oh, he's going to go play with his buddies. He's going to go play with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. We all know the rest is history at that point, where the vitriol, and to their credit, the media was not very happy with how LeBron played that whole thing out anyway. But seeing how it was now taken to another level with his fame, with his notoriety, and him being the bad guy in the NBA, but then you're winning championships, starting to now finally win championships, and then his time with Miami being over, goes back to Cleveland. Everybody started singing his praises again for going back to Cleveland. Okay, I gave him a little bit of credit for that too, because he still wanted to accomplish what he set out to do the first time. Okay. Cooler heads prevailed between him and the owner, Dan Gilbert, at the time as well. I know Gilbert's still the owner, but at the time there was a lot of animosity between those two, but cooler heads prevailed, and hey, let's win a championship. They went all in. They got LeBron that one title for the Cleveland Cavaliers out of 4 consecutive finals appearances against the same team, the Golden State Warriors, but everybody gave credit. I gave credit to LeBron at that time too. You finally got the title that you promised to the city of Cleveland. Then he leaves to go to the Lakers. And the media there was no criticism anymore. It wasn't a big production about, his announcement or anything like that. He learned his lesson from leaving Cleveland the first time. So he didn't go about it that way. But now, being in LA, the writing was on the wall. Now he's going to, be in the backyard of Hollywood and have more access to the movie industry, television productions, all kinds of stuff. You see him and his business partner, Maverick Carter. Their names are executive producers on a lot of productions lately in the last 5 years since he's been with the Lakers, even before that probably, but now it's happening more often. But the sports media, and specifically, just does not call out the BS from LeBron, because there's been a lot lately since he's been with the Lakers, especially. There was that supposed derogatory racial slur spray painted on his gated property, on the outside of his gated property. Police were called, but by the time police did show up, according to the story, it was already cleaned up. It wasn't there. And then it became, okay, there's nothing here then. If you cleaned it up, why'd you call us? That's how that story went. But no answer. No follow-up from anybody in the press to say, well, how come you're saying this to the sports media that something like this happened when it was cleaned up? Nothing came about that. So that was one. The second one, when it came to LeBron, and I made a video about how, he's legitimately a moron. There was, at the height of all the, quote unquote, potential civil unrest when it came to police and and the black community, and I don't remember when this one happened, but it was clear as day on a dash cam video of a police officer being called to a domestic incident. There were a couple black women. One of them clearly had a knife. She was going after another black woman, about to stab that other woman, and the police officer that showed up on scene, clear as day on the dash cam, was yelling out instructions. Obviously, the woman with the knife did not listen, did not pay attention. She saw red, and she was going after this other woman, intending to stab her, and the police officer fired upon that woman and instantly killing her. LeBron James, at the time, he did not keep this tweet up after he did it, but he put a photo of the police officer that saved the other woman's life. He put a picture of that police officer. He happens to be a white police officer, but he puts a picture up of that guy and he says, "You're next," on the post on Twitter. It's no longer up, but LeBron did that to his millions and millions of followers on that social media site. I mean, the video was clear as day. It was not a postponed video that came later after the fact. When the incident happened, the video was released for everybody to see. Hey, this is pretty cut and dry here. And yet that's LeBron's reaction to it, which is why I called him a moron. And I still think he is a moron for doing that. But there's no pushback on LeBron. There's no pushback to say, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you going about it this way? Why are you voicing your opinion about something like this? Why is it that things have to be fine-tuned a certain way to fit your narrative, LeBron? What the hell's going on here? Nobody's asking just basic follow-up questions to see what's the grand scheme here. So as we get closer and closer to this is not a condemnation. I'm going to say this first and foremost. This is not going to be a condemnation on his son, Bronny James. This is not a condemnation on him at all. I hope Bronny James can develop into a good basketball player, decent basketball player. He's got a very long uphill climb, clearly, because when you are the son of LeBron James, a lot of pressure's on you. That's all I can say at that point. I can't imagine the pressure that's on this kid. And it's coming from not just the fame, the notoriety, and all that stuff. It's probably also coming from your dad to a degree. I would hope his dad's not constantly on him like other examples of fathers and sons, especially the father, the fathers pressuring the sons into fame and fortune. A lot of times it's because the dad never had that fame and fortune, so they want to put it all into their kid. However, with LeBron, he's clearly got the fame and fortune, but he's also wanting to help his ego. And he said it many times publicly that he would love to have his son play next to him on the basketball court in the NBA. He said that on multiple occasions. And now, oh, look what happened. The Lakers picked him in the second round, late in the second round. I think it was like fifth to fourth last pick of the entire draft is when he got drafted. And then all these media reports about LeBron's agent, Rich Paul, who's been there side by side with LeBron, also helping with that, access when it comes to the sports media, basically shunning anybody that would dare criticize LeBron James, but allowing that access to those that want to keep shining praise on him his entire career, especially after leaving Cleveland the first time and the second time to a lesser degree, but now coming to LA. It's like nobody wants to push back against him at all. So Bronny James gets drafted. Rich Paul is telling other teams not to draft him. Because if you do draft him, the story went that he's now going to go play in Australia if you draft him. He's not going to play for you. He wants to play. So essentially, it's implying that he only wants to play for his dad. Oh, okay. Color me shocked. I had no idea that's what his intent was. Because I was under the impression, leading up to this draft, the way ESPN was talking about this, that this was supposed to be the draft of Bronny James. If anybody was going to pay attention to it, I didn't. I saw it in passing what was going on. And of course, when I see Bronny James does get drafted by the Lakers, I thought he would have been drafted in the first round, to be honest with you. I'm kind of surprised that didn't happen. But he got drafted in the second round. Congratulations. Yeah, you get to play with your dad. But the way in which ESPN was covering this draft before it took place was to try to pretend like Bronny James is worth a first-round pick when, again, not throwing anything at Bronny, but you're one and done year in college at USC. You averaged just over 5 points a game. Your one and done season. You would have been better off, in my opinion, regardless of if you're LeBron's son or not. Stay in college. If you didn't like your situation in USC, then transfer somewhere else. Thanks to NIL and all that ridiculousness in the transfer portal. Find somewhere else where they will actually play you to have you average more than 5 points, possibly double digits a game then, if that's the case. But what the hell are you doing now thinking that coming to the NBA is going to serve you in your best interest? You're only doing this, it seems, from the outside perspective, to basically help accomplish your dad's dream of playing with you in the NBA. And when he's all said and done with his NBA career, which is not going to be lasting much longer, I would suspect, now that he's got the 1 year at least, maybe 2, because with second-round picks, I think they get 2-year contracts, to play with your kid. So is this going to help Bronny have a long, sustained future in the NBA? I highly doubt that, because from my perspective, this is just to satisfy LeBron's ego. Him and nobody else. I don't understand how this is going to help him in the long run. But there's no pushback. No pushback from sports media at all. Not a single solitary second of it. It's amazing to me. And they're actually defending this whole thing with Stephen Smith, Adrian Wojnarowski. This is his time to shine, but man, he let it rip and said, there's nepotism all over the league. So don't come at me with that. There's nepotism everywhere. Oh, okay. I was under the impression the last few years, since the summer of Floyd in 2020, that nepotism was a bad thing. That anything having to do with privilege was a bad thing. I was under that impression that as a whole, nepotism and privilege was a bad thing. That's what I was led to believe, but evidently you were obviously lying about it at that time, because now that it's in a position where it's good nepotism, it's good privilege, oh, it works because it's LeBron James. It's his nepotism. It's his privilege. I have to continue to get access to continue to kiss LeBron James's ass. So I must say that this nepotism and privilege is good. I have to say that because I want to be able to continue to have access to kissing his ass, whether privately or publicly. I don't know. But it's clearly publicly, because, man, the ass kissing is just relentless. And Ryan Clark. I know he was a semi decent football player in his time. He had a couple good years, but wow, he put out a word salad on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it now. He put out a word salad that basically decried nepotism, but defended it when it came to LeBron James playing with his son, and then went on to describe everything that nepotism is in defending LeBron playing with his son with the Lakers. It was quite a word salad. But yeah, Ryan Clark he's right there in that category with Stephen Smith. I mean, he's learning from the best. He's learning from Stephen Smith of how to play this weird game in the press to continue to get access to kiss certain players' butts in front of all the eyeballs to see. It's comical. It's amazing to see. It's amazing to watch in real time. And all I can say is, especially with how things have been unfolding in to take back from sports, but to say in real life. So not to say it's all been politics, but just current events, things of that nature, how things have transpired, not just with, the COVID stuff. COVID was definitely a big eye-opening moment for myself and the way I'm looking about things in the sports world, especially. I got a completely different perspective of how I look at things and how I will go about covering some things in that aspect, especially first and foremost, I used to theorize and speculate going into middle school, high school days, early adulthood that, I wonder if this guy's going to get paid, how much money for his contract. I wonder how much this guy's going to get, how's this going to work for that team's salary cap? I fixated a lot about that stuff. Not to say that it was something that I was idolizing, envious of, or anything to that nature. I mean, that's a lot of money in sports nowadays. Hell of a lot of money, which is why it's kind of for the worst when it comes to the youth movement, youth sports nowadays. But I don't care about that shit anymore. I don't want to focus about that at all. I don't want to look at a guy's contract and have that be like the biggest story of, that guy moving to where he is in free agency or, contract disputes and things of that nature. It's like, okay, that's a side note. I don't give a damn about that. That's not important to me, because first and foremost, reality kicks in and says, hey, if I'm going to be focusing and talking about this stuff on a regular basis, whether it's on social media or being here on this live stream, there are folks that are watching this that are paying attention and realizing, hey, I could barely afford to put food on my plate, on my table right now for either myself or my family. The hell do I care about some guy making that kind of money? I totally agree. I really don't give a shit about guys making that kind of money anymore. I don't care about people bitching that their average salary is six figures in the WNBA and they're complaining about not getting equal pay compared to the men. No, nobody wants to hear that crap. But yet they always want to play that angle because the press always wants to have a sympathetic voice to the athlete for access. And I think that needs to stop, especially with what's going on with the Lakers, now known as the LeBrons, because the head coach, JJ Redick, doing a podcast with LeBron James, now he got that job. And it was a total setup with Dan Hurley at UConn and the Lakers. They were both setting each other up for success, quote unquote, because Dan Hurley is going to get more money as an extension with UConn. The Lakers played it up like Dan Hurley was the first guy they wanted to get, but in reality, they really wanted to get JJ Redick. So now they pivoted fairly quickly and went to Redick to make it seem like, oh, he was our backup plan, but we really wanted to get Dan Hurley. So that was out of no bullshit. That was clearly a play for both sides there. And then with LeBron, obviously he's going to come back now that the Lakers drafted his kid, and that obviously was not contingent on them drafting his kid. He was going to come back, but the fact of the matter is you can't sit there and tell me that there weren't discussions behind the scenes about JJ Redick getting the job and also drafting his son in the second round. You can't tell me that. I don't believe it. That's absolutely what happened. LeBron is all over this. This franchise was once great. It's no longer anymore. And dare I say, as a lifelong Laker fan, Jim Buss was a better owner than Jeannie Buss is. Dare I say. I don't care that she got a title as the owner. It was a bubble title. Nobody gives a rip about it. Even as Laker fans, we really don't give a shit about that bubble title. But dare I say, Jim Buss was a better owner than Jeannie Buss currently is. So that's where I'll leave it. Thank you again for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell below to get notified when all the latest videos are posted on this channel, whether it be at YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey. WesTheSportsGuy.com is where you can get the links to all those channels on those video sites. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not streaming there anymore because they're stupid changes to their live stream restrictions now, but you can follow me there. Help me get over 100. If you want to see live streaming on Facebook, locals, all those links at WesTheSportsGuy.com. Call them the LA LeBron's from now on, because it's no longer the Lakers. This is not the Lakers anymore until LeBron's out of there and his entire just it's bad. It really is. But that's what they'll be known as from now on for myself, the LA LeBron's. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.